Here we are once again working in our very basic program structure here where we've defined a customer. Now we have this concept of a generic customer within our application, and I use the word generic for a reason, simply because this is kind of the template that we're going to use to create this abstraction of what a customer is in the real world to what it is within our system. Now, what if we're working in a scenario where we have different types of customers? So maybe we have a customer that comes into one of our retail stores, or maybe we have a customer who only comes and uses our online shopping experience. So now we have this separation where at their absolute base, we are talking about the same type of customer here, but the functionality and the rules and the validation and all those things might be a little bit different based on the type of customer that we're dealing with, whether they are a retail customer or an online customer. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is be able to differentiate between the two by not only the reference to those types of customers within our code, but at the same time, we don't want to have to duplicate a lot of this work. So we've already created this customer class that has a few properties and some logic behind it. I would hate to have to copy this customer class and then paste it, and then have to do this all over again. And now we have two sets of classes that ultimately carry the same implementation with a lot of duplicate code. And if you've ever talked to me before, one of my biggest pet peeves is duplication of code, merely for the fact that it introduces so many opportunities to make a mess and so many different opportunities to make errors within your code. So one thing that I like to do in a situation like that is create some sort of basic representation of what my base object is going to look like, and in this case, customer. And now I also want to create representations of that for both my retail customer as well as my online customer. So that is where the concept of inheritance comes into play. So we're going to create a few new classes here, but instead of copying those, we're going to use the C# paradigm to create a new customer that's going to be a new class that's going to be a retail or an online customer, but it's going to share this same functionality for this particular customer class here. So we're going to do that by using public class, and then we're going to create a retail customer, which is going to represent a customer that comes into one of our stores, and then we're going to separate this with a colon, and we're going to say that this is a subclass of customer. So now I haven't added any sort of customization to this retail customer, but I'm saying that it inherits from the customer class that we've already defined. So now if I were to come up here and use this class, I could now say var retail customer or retail cust, and we'll say that this is equal to a new retail customer. And as you'll see here, I have access to the same properties and ultimately methods that are exposed publicly from my customer class. So now I have a different representation of what a customer could look like, but it still maintains those same commonality or those same common characteristics of a customer. So now I can do the same thing again. And I could now create, instead of a retail customer, maybe this is an online customer, and do exactly the same thing. So this is kind of nice, but what is this really buying me other than saving me a little bit in the duplication of code area? Well, now I can start to add different customizations to this particular class. So now as a retail customer, maybe I have some sort of billing information or some credit card information. So now I have, we'll just say a string for the time being. Maybe they have credit card. And now we can take in a credit card from a customer at the retail side and use that in some sort of transaction. And now maybe they also have some sort of identifier. Maybe I have a retail identifier that's going to identify me at particular retail stores throughout my business. And now I can differentiate that from an online customer. So maybe now I'm going to have some sort of online identifier like that. And then also I could have a number of other things in here about my experience on the website, maybe my web history with respect to what it is I'm doing on this website. What pages am I viewing on my website, so I can then tailor the experience for this particular user based on their habits on my website. So these are how these types of things begin to differentiate themselves from the customer base class by adding in some specific information about their experience as a either retail customer or an online customer, but I don't ever have to worry about these basic shared features of a customer, namely first name, last name, and email. So this is the basic concept of inheritance within object-oriented programming and C#. Now, you might begin to ask yourself, well, what do I do if there's a difference with the way we handle some of these things in here of our base class in our different implementations of either the retail customer or the online customer? Maybe the validations are different, or maybe the save is different. How do we handle those types of situations? Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next lesson when we start to talk about the concept of polymorphism.